Hello and welcome to Parent Bootcamp Lesson Pack 3, Playing with Friends. So the first thing that we have to work on is the foundational part of playing with friends, which is noticing friends. And so in order to notice friends, we have to have our children have to have some very strong joint attention skills. And so with joint attention, we've talked about it before, but it's basically your child's ability to draw another person's attention to, or even be interested in drawing another person's attention to a shared activity or object. Joint attention, getting that skill down just gives your child the more interest in seeking out social attention and giving them a chance to value the praise that they get as they start connecting with the world a little bit more. So how can you help them to get these foundational skills down that will eventually lead them to great friendships is first helping them to communicate with others about things that have happened to them in the world. So if you and grandma are at lunch with the child and you say, "Do you know what, Grandma? Johnny went to the park today and he had so much fun. Can you tell Grandma what you did at the park today?" And you went on and give them as many cues as you have to. You went on remember, you went on the and you give them the initial sound of the word, or maybe the child will tell her, I went on the slide. And then grandma will say, "You went on the slide. That's amazing. Was it so much fun?" And so things that have happened in their day that you know about, bringing that information to another person so that that other person can then give responses that will encourage your child to want to tell more people about things. It really only takes one person that shows the right type of interest aside from you that will trigger this interest in social interaction with others, adults first, because adults are a lot more forgiving, and then eventually other children. So the more you can do that, the better. And so and you can also do that with your child's therapists and teachers. So think about things that have happened and encourage that recently. It has to be very recent, within that day would be great if your child has a harder time recalling things or recalling events, or if it was a big thing like I went to Disneyland. Oh my gosh, you went to Disneyland. What was your favorite thing at Disneyland, or who did you see at Disneyland? Thinking about questions to ask them that that they are able to answer. And then the next thing you can work on to establish these foundational joint attention skills are helping your child understand other people's feelings and thoughts, and by reading cues. So there's a great program by Michelle Garcia Winters called Being a Social Detective. And so if your child's a little bit older, those books are really great. And she has a program called Center for Social Thinking that is in San Jose. And so they have different classes, but they have wonderful materials that you can order online that have, they're kind of broken down like a superhero comic book might be broken down, with the superhero being Superflex. And so Superflex is very flexible. He has his social skills down, but then certain times of the day, different people take over his brain, like Rock Brain. And Rock Brain is a bad guy who doesn't allow Superflex to think differently. He's very inflexible, Rock Brain, and he only thinks about things the one way. He only plays with things in a one way. He only does things in one way. And so each of those hard things for your children socially to overcome are portrayed by a bad guy or a villain that Superflex must battle. And so there's that program. There's the Social Detective series where we identify how kids are feeling by their body language, by their nonverbal cues, like we had talked about before. And so how you can work on this, aside from those books by Michelle Garcia Winner, is to just draw your child's attention when you see another person that is having an emotional experience in whatever way. They can be super happy, super sad, super frustrated, mad, but you want to talk to your child about that. Wow, that man looks so happy. Why do you think he's happy? Or if there's a story and there's a boy and he's holding a balloon and he's got a big smile on his face, you can say, that little boy is so happy. Why do you think he's happy? And then take a moment and point to the balloon and see if the child says balloon, and say, yeah, balloon, maybe he got a balloon and that made him happy. What makes you happy? And so the other thing you can use for this is also like screen time videos, movies, talking about how different events made that person feel and how we can tell they feel that way by reading their cues. And then the third thing you can do is working on eye contact or gaze, teaching them how to shift it between a person and an object, or an object and another object. With regards to eye gaze and shifting eye gaze, it's a hard skill, and you might see your kiddo turn their whole head when you ask them to look at something. So what you want to work on is just move your eyes way over to the side, move your eyes up here and see if you can see the light, move your eyes over to this way and tell me if you can see the clock. You may have to break it down that much, where you're looking into that. If you notice that your child doesn't really move their eyes around, because it's a muscle, and if they haven't done it before, then it's a hard muscle to handle. But you have to start working on it now too, because it will help them with their reading. So kiddos that have a hard time shifting and moving their eye gaze have a harder time jumping to the next line when they're reading left to right. So that shifting eye gaze can be worked on with games too. So you could say, oh, look at me, look at the ball, look at the clock, and having them work on that. Or when they're playing, calling their name, or just telling them, oh, look up once in a while, or what am I holding, and have them look up in that way. So pulling their attention away from play to look up at you as much as you can in whatever way you can will help them build that skill. So we're going to move on to, so now that we have the joint attention foundational skills that you're working on, then we also want to build on the functional communication skills. They kind of function together. Joint attention and functional communication come together in order for a child to communicate with peers. So I want to just make sure that you have these down. We've seen these slides before, both the one before this and this one, but they're always worth repeating, and they're the most important things. So functional communication skills. The way that you can do that is teaching your child to give you things. Show them something they want, and then give them the container to open it. And when they have a hard time, reach out and see if they need some help. And then if they do need help, open it up and give it back and name it to them. So after they get into this routine, then you have them at eye contact when they hand it over for help. Don't open it until they look at you in your eyes. So that teaches them to give you things. So just reaching out and saying, do you need help? And doing that more frequently, as opposed to just taking it from them and then opening it and handing them back. This will teach them that you can go to someone and ask them to help you. You just have to use your eye contact and sometimes your words. And then the other thing to teach them is teaching them to show you things. And I gave you the page numbers here too. There's a little bit more of an explanation, as well as some examples in the book. So when your child's holding an object, you just get in front of them and say, show me, by holding out your hand. And then when they hold it out to you, you just say, wow, that's so nice. And then don't take it. And then if you can get them to add eye contact, until and the way to do that is, it's kind of a sneaky trick, but you don't say anything. Like they're holding the car out to show you, you don't say anything until they look at you, and they're going to look at you eventually if they're motivated by your play. So when they look up at you, that's when you talk. So that teaches them, oh well, I have to look at the same time. Okay, so you have working on your joint attention skills, teaching your child to give you things and show you things, and all of those three things are important skills when they're playing with peers. And then the other one is teaching them to point. So pointing also helps with peer interaction, of course. And so how do you teach them to point? We've talked about it a little bit, but these are very clear descriptions, and you can see more information on page 233. But first you point to or tap an object to get your child's attention. Sally, look, a cookie. And then keep repositioning until they look. So you can either reposition yourself, you can reposition your child, or you can reposition the object until they look at you. And then the goal is for the child to point to the object and then do the give me gesture. So we want them, so first you show it to them, you get them really close, and then you teach them to point by showing that you know what they want and molding their hand into a point, okay? So once you've molded their hand, then you have them touch it, and first it's proximal, so close by, and then you pull the object further and farther away, and that encourages them for that skill in our ESDM checklist, which is pointing in a distal manner, so from 1 foot to 6 feet away. And so when they've got the distal pointing down, so they can do it proximally, they can touch the object, they can do it within a foot, then you move it to 3 feet away. Then you want to start working on pointing between two items to make a choice. So you kind of set up the environment where the two objects are far, far away first, and then you bring them closer and closer together. And so the very last step, of course, is adding eye contact, and you do that by being in front of them or after they learn to point, and then before we give them what they want. So they're looking at the object, they actually hopefully look at you, because then they're doing their joint attention, and then you give it to them after they make the eye contact with you. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of information, but first close by, then distally, then choosing between two items. All right, and now I want to review playing with toys. Since you got your functional communication, your joint attention, let's just run through playing with toys really quick. So remember, you're doing setup the toys, making a theme, creating a variation, and closing. Those are the 4 steps that we had talked about regarding teaching playing. Setup, theme, variation, and closing. So what you want to do is increase the number of toys your child knows how to play by teaching them how to play with it. So get the space organized, make sure that they can do some things independently, and then you want to ease out of the partner play role and just kind of check in on their play, and then bring down the support that you're offering, so you're only doing a little bit here and there, and then moving away while they play. So again, first you're teaching them by showing them all the steps. You're setting up the activity. You're saying, oh, we're going to play cars. You show them how you're going to play cars. This is when they're first learning how to imitate. You show them a variation on how they're going to play cars, and hopefully they're imitating that, and then you close the activity. And eventually they've learned maybe 10 toys and how to do that. You want to set the toys out in a way that they can access them. And then you want to ease out of that partner play role. You want to ease out of their play partner. And the way to do that is, step away. Oh, you keep playing, I'll be right over here. Or mommy's got to do the dishes, or dad's got to, go do something, be right back. And then keep checking back in. And like they may get stuck on a certain part. And so you go back in and you remind them how to do it, or you fix it. And then you move back, and then you go back in. And maybe they're not doing a variation on the play. They're just doing it over and over again. So you sit down with them, you show them a variation on how to play, they imitate it, you're keeping an eye on it and you're slowly moving away. The goal is independent play, and so that will lead to parallel play with peers. And then the next thing is pretend play. And now this is the tricky one because you're asking a child that has a hard time making pictures in their head of things that they learn to hold on to that information. So pretend play can be challenging. So first, do it basically it's because it has to come from your child's head, and basically they have all these thoughts that are happening but they're not able to act them out. So make it very easy for them by, first you're animating play, you're using dolls, you're using animals as if they were alive and real people. Oh, the dinosaur is going to have a drink, eat some food. So, basically, if your child's not great at imitating or pretend play, just feed everything. Feed the animals, feed the dolls, feed the cars, because they can get behind that. Feed the barn animals. Oh, he's so hungry, give him some food to eat. And then you can have them go to sleep. So think about the things your child knows about and does every day. Sleep, eat, goes for a ride in the car, and takes a bath, right? Basically. So those types of pretend play acts you can have a bear do, you can have a dinosaur do, you can have a dog do, any of those creatures, and then add in people if possible. Superheroes sometimes work. Sometimes the little people work, sometimes the babies work. So you have to kind of try it out. And then the next thing would be using different items like objects as if they were something else. So you're using a block as a phone, a stick as a spoon. So the way to do that is just, pick up a pencil and start talking into it, or a banana or something like that, and then hand it to your child and say, oh, it's daddy, say hi, that type of thing. So acting it out with them. And then eventually, you'll get to the point where they do little pretend play acts. So you first have to show them these things, though. So I would start off easily, like going to the store, like, oh, let's pretend we're going to the store again. What are we going to get at the store today? And then have a little bag and then put the item in the bag and, oh, we did it. Or have, if they've just gone to the dentist, then oh, what did the dentist do? He made us open our mouth. Like, it doesn't have to be super elaborate as far as with objects and toys and things. It's more or less acting out things that just happened, which would be a great way to start if you're doing like a combination of pretend play acts. So think about just making it real for them. One thing that I recall that has helped with some of the kiddos is if they go somewhere, like to the post office, to the bank, to Disneyland, to somewhere, you bring back something from there for them that they can use during their pretend play, and it really does help them think about the actual time that they were there. And so then you can act it out in play a lot more easily, because oh, look, remember we this is what we got when we were at Disneyland, or this is what we got when we were at the post office today. They gave us this paper, and like a flyer, brochure. Those visuals stimulate memories, which then they can tag events such as play into, and it is pretty helpful. And then we're teaching the children now to do these things themselves, like setting up their animals, their objects, their food, their dress up. We're teaching them, what the theme could be and how they can actually create the theme. And then what we like to see is a role reversal at some point. So if we're doing pretend play or different symbolic play, we want to see the child eventually do things for you, like brush your hair and the animal's hair, as opposed to us always doing things to the child, like, oh, here, take a drink. You want to see them start acting these things out on other objects, toys, whatever, and then show variations, and then expanding it with many different objects. So it's the same steps, set up, theme, variation, and expanding, but you're not just teaching them how to play with one toy. You're actually teaching them a routine for playing different activities. Okay. So when you are working on playing with friends with your child, there's some preparation work that I encourage you to do ahead of time, which is really becoming the other child in your child's eyes so that you can prepare them for what other children are going to do. And that can be the way that you want to work on that is first, rehearsing the play routines, that you may even have to say things like, oh, that's mine, or tell them if they snatch something, like, I don't like that. Let's play something else, or I don't want to play that. Think about things that you think other kids would say or do, and then get your child ready for it. So that's what we're talking about, rehearsing. You can rehearse songs too with your child that that kids sing, because that's something where you're working on imitation, and it might be something the other child is recognizing, and you guys can do together. You're also going to rehearse games and different play routines. So first you'll practice and role play. So you're going to, again, have to be the kid, and you're going to have to be the one that advocates for yourself in a way that a child would. And then we want to prepare them for success. And that means, talking things through with them as much as you can, setting up the environment in a way, if you're having a play date, that's going to encourage interaction, but also you're going to take all those really super favorite toys that would cause your child to have a meltdown, and put them away for the play date that you have. You want to think about what's going to be a problem and avoid it. So look at your child's schedule, and if you're doing a play date at your house or scheduling one somewhere else, then you want to think about the best time of day for your kiddo, the best, like the toys that they would most likely share, and those, and also think about what activities your child is good at. So as far as that goes, it can be something where I encourage you not to go to a playground for your first play date, because you don't get as much time to just, get the children together sometimes. So think about that. If you're, how does your child behave at a playground? And if they mostly just like to run and move around and that type of thing, but you're looking for them to get some more on the floor playtime with other kiddos, then definitely don't hold your play date at a park. Just an idea. And then also prepare your child for challenges. So get them ready for what happens if their friend says no or doesn't want to share. You have to talk it through. Oh, and by being that person, no, this is mine now. I'm not sharing. Or teaching them to trade or take a turn, that type of thing. So you want to think of all the challenges that might happen and prepare for them as much as you can. So the best way to start teaching your child interaction and play skills with peers is start with just one friend, because having a friend, it takes a long time, and so we're not always going to find the perfect matches at first, and so it requires a lot of patience and persistence. And right now your child is just learning how to be a friend, so we want to talk to your child's educators and ask them, is there a friend in their class? Is there somebody that they like? Or if you take your child to a group class and you see there's one kiddo that, seems to be drawn to them. They don't really talk, but they seem to like each other, or somebody that your child is drawn to. It's just tricky because each child, takes turns, interacts, and participates differently. So it really does depend on their age and their ability, but also their behavior. So first, try to find a child that's very understanding and easy to work with. So this could be an older child in your neighborhood, or an older child that your child's, sibling or something like that. They're much more patient generally, or younger. If your child might like to be the big guy, and the little one that is following them around might make them feel pretty good. So you can go either way. Just make sure that the other child has some play skills, because if you want your child to have somebody to model. They don't have to have perfect play skills. They just have to have coachable play skills. The same age peer is the most challenging because that does place the highest demand. So that child is the same age as your child and has all the play skills your child should have. And that is very intimidating, especially if they talk a lot. So, consider if it is the same age, then what kind of child is it? Is it a pretty mellow child? Is it a child that, your child is just so drawn to that, they will follow them to the ends of the earth? Those are kind of the good kids to pick, the ones that your child really loves. So, but just to know that that's the hardest one, the one that is their same age. Of course, make sure they're interested in playing together. We already talked about that. And then as your child gets better and their confidence grows at playing, then you have to choose children that are more challenging. So the first time or the first few times, choose a non-challenging child, and then once your child starts enjoying it, that's when you start picking kids that are a little tougher. I'm going to assume that this is going to be a play date you're planning, and so we're going to talk about how to structure a play date with a kiddo for your child. So you want to include some structured time and non-structured time during your play. So the structured time would be something where your child and another child play together with adults, and you're making sure that they interact and communicate effectively, that they're taking turns well, that they're sharing, which they won't. So don't even worry about that being a problem because it's going to be hard. Then we're going to talk about taking turns in a second and sharing too. But then so with non-structured play, so structured, adults are there, da, 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 da. Non-structured, the toys are out, the children get used to one another and just become comfortable with each other. So, it can be something that's a joint activity. There's a little picture there of the two kids coloring on the easel together. That's a great activity. Or if you just roll paper out on the table and some crayons and things, that could be something they could play together. Or there's just a bunch of toys out, not too many because that's overwhelming, but maybe a car ramp and some cars and maybe one other option, and they play kind of parallel play in the same spot in the same area, but you're not forcing anything. So it should go back and forth, especially in the beginning. So the next bullet is use a picture schedule if needed. I think it's a great idea if you can do a picture schedule, even if you just jot it down on paper. So because you don't know what's going to happen, so you want to put in everything in place that could make sure that everything goes well. So you have your first picture and it's just play. The second is maybe you're going outside for a little bit in the backyard. Then you bring in the more structured thing. And so the more structured thing could be like your moms and dads are sitting together with the kiddos and you're all playing this super cool game with balls and cars or something. So, it's more of an activity that you bring out for that structured playtime. That's a special game or activity. It's really important that you don't, that you save that activity for the structured thing, because it's a novelty, and novelties are motivating, and that will hopefully allow a little bit more interaction between your child and their new friend. And the picture schedule could show that, new toy, and then snack is always a good one to add into play times or play dates. It seems a little silly, but getting them at a table together and having a little snack is a really super way to have modeling going on, as well as, attention, turn taking, and just getting them together in the same spot. Keep your play dates very short at first and then extend the length. So, just an hour is going to seem long. And you're thinking an hour goes quickly, but an hour with two kids that you're not sure what's going to happen is long. So I would say, 45 minutes for the first one. And it can be something where it's very unstructured initially. They get to play, then a snack time where they're sitting at the table together and see each other and kind of get used to getting close to each other. Then that's when I pull out the structured activity, the something fun and exciting. Then a non-structured thing again where they just go play, and then I would end the play date. That's my thought on breaking it down in a 45-minute play date. It'll go a lot better, and if you use the picture schedule, that'll be amazing, because you can show your child, okay, we're almost done with this, and then, or because the structured play will be the hardest. Just expect that, because you're integrating a whole nother child into your child's play, which can be tricky, and another parent, and you don't know how that parent talks to their child. So you may want to have a little conversation ahead of time and just say, this will be his first play date. So I just want to let you know, this is what I've put together, because it probably will be the most successful, because you just want it successful. You want to end the day on a happy note. If things are looking like they're crashing downward, then end the play date before it crashes completely, so they want to come back and do it again. And so talk to the other parent, let them know the plan, so they're on the same level as you as far as what you're working on. And then also let them know what you're working on. I'm working on turn taking. This is what I'm thinking of doing. I know it seems like a big commitment, but it's probably the best way that your child's going to learn how to communicate and interact with peers, to have you there with them and coaching them through it. So here are some ideas about choosing toys and activities for social interaction and peer first play dates. You want to think about toys that encourage interaction. So things like blocks. There's tons of blocks. One's building a tower, the other one's building a bridge. They can, knock the blocks over, take turns knocking them over. Cars are, of course, wonderful. Playing ball, bubbles are great. That's a rather non-structured thing that kids love, and they can use language. They can take turns. They can a lot of things. Dolls are great. Outdoor play is great, as long as it's kind of in a backyard or a more central area where the kids can't get too far away from each other. And eventually board games. Board games shouldn't really be introduced until they're over 3.5 years old, and they should be super simple. Even Candyland is really hard for a 3.5-year-old. I know it says 3 on the label on the box, but modify, if it's going to be a board game, then modify the board game to as much as you can, like whatever makes it simple in one step. I don't love the idea of board games until kids are older, but if you have older kids, it's a great thing. Another great idea for play dates and introducing peers to your child is doubling toys. So pulling out 2 sets of things, it will encourage, and you should have some anyways, because we were working on doubling toys for our imitation skills. So pull out those double toys again, and then your child and the other child will have the same toys to play with, and they can learn from each other. And just remember that when you're picking the toys, that the goal is for your child to take turns, so verbally and through play. So you want to think of toys that allow them to take a turn, like the ball tower. I always talk about the ball tower, but it's a great game for turn taking. And cars going down a ramp, or popping bubbles, or just the back and forth of it is what you want to see them focusing on for play, because that eventually builds into communication back and forth, turn taking. Try to avoid things like puzzles, shape sorters, etc. That's something that is a little bit harder to incorporate a peer into, and they're more activities that you would just do one-on-one. So avoid that if you can. And then sharing is caring. So that is something that you want to think about when you're choosing activities. So you want to think about communal activities, like drawing is a communal activity if you have like the easel with one big piece of paper and they're both coloring, or markers, or painting, or having a snack, or it's usually art and snack that are the most communal. Think about when you are putting different activities out, even art supplies and things. If your child's a little older and there's scissors and there's glue and there's, glue sticks, if you put out just one of those materials, one set of scissors, one glue stick, one, blue marker, one red marker, then you're encouraging turn taking, because they are going to have to ask each other to, or request somehow for the other one to get the item. So whereas before we were doubling toys during play, during the communal activities, then just use one of each thing and have them request. It's going to cause frustration, so be ready for that and say, oh, there's only one set of scissors, so when you need the scissors, you have to ask your friend. And that way, you're kind of decreasing the frustration ahead of time. They know that it's coming. The role that you need to think about at this point, with your child, when you're introducing peers, is more of a coach. So you're a playmate, you're the play partner, and then you have to move into a new role. And every parent has to do this as their child gets older, right? You teach them everything, you do everything with them, they're with you, you're side by side, showing them things, doing things with them, and then eventually it's a phone call that you get and they ask you questions and you're coaching them through things. And so when you take on the coaching role, it's less doing and more, giving them guidance and feedback. And so that's really the role we want you to move into with the social interaction as well. So initially you stay with them, you interpret what's going on. Oh, she's sad because you took her ball away. You encourage them, go and say hi, go say, can I play? And then you explain what's going on. Oh, she doesn't want to play right now. Maybe later, maybe next time. And then as long as they're doing good, fade back. Let them play together with their friend as independently as possible, and then jump back in as needed. And so let a little bit of a challenge take place, but instead of jumping in so early that you avoid the challenge. So when they first get together, you're trying to set it up to be perfect, but as your child gets a little bit better with playing with friends, see if they can work things out a little bit on their own before you jump in, because they're going to have to figure that out when you're not there. And so taking turns is the part that is the big, tricky part for kiddos, as you can tell. Sometimes kids, like as somebody who watches a lot of kids around here at our school, there's a few different things a child will do. They will, if somebody takes their toy, they'll walk away. They will cry and scream. They will hit, bite, or try to pull the toy back. So it's kind of a known response. So practice with your child first, and how to practice turn taking. We've talked about turn taking in play and how to introduce it. So you have to just keep working on it, but from the point of view of as you are another child. So doing things like, not giving the toy to your child when they want to turn, and making them ask again. Doing things like taking your child's turn from them and making them ask. So basically you're teaching your child to be their own advocate, and that's a really good thing. So how to do that? Teach them no, teach them mine. Those are the two big words. And I know it sounds rude and all that, but they have to have words like stop, no, mine, in order to protect themselves from and feel like they're confident that they can protect themselves. So no, stop, mine are the big three that I would teach my child, and I would do it through pretending I am their peer. So what you want to do, practicing wise, is setting up the opportunities to take turns, like on a slide, like a cleanup time, that type of thing, during their play date. So you practiced, now they're going to have their play date. You're going to set up activities like, we had talked about before, one marker, one glue stick that they have to share, activities that they have to take turns, and then you use the same words when you practice. So you say, oh, it's Sally's turn. Oh, now it's Mary's turn, where it used to be my turn, your turn, Jimmy's turn, mommy's turn. And then if it doesn't generalize, then join in to the turns. So you're now taking a turn as well. And that's a really great way to model how to coach it, model how to do it. You kind of doing it for them, and then fade out as much as you can again. So you jump in and then you fade out, and then you jump in when they're having a problem, and then you fade out. You also want to think about balancing the turns between the two kiddos. So first, you want to expect that your child's going to participate in the same way that their friend does, but you may have to place some expectations first, because if the other play partner isn't great at taking turns either, somebody has to be the umpire, and that's you. And you're the coach and the umpire. So you say, in this game, we, take turns. In this game, one person goes and the other person goes. So making sure that that one child doesn't take all the turns and the other child doesn't take any, because then you're defeating the purpose. So you're going to have to jump in. And then pretend play, which, remember earlier in our talk today, we talked about pretend play and how to get, how that's a really important part of play skills, and basically how we're teaching our children that. Now we want to carry it over with our peers. So first you're practicing it with the child, your own child, and then you do things like, you have an imaginary phone call, you practice, and you do cooking. Those are different play things that you can do, pretend play things that are focused on functional play that they've seen in their environment. And it's not going to last very long. It's going to be a short pretend play thing. And then you could be, depending upon if you're the partner, you could be a playmate, or you can coach the other kids. So with your child and another child, and maybe by this time there's the third child, you could say things like, oh, let's pretend we're going to go to, you guys are doing the store. Here's the cash register, here's some bags. And you could show them once, just have, you be in the cash register and you say this, oh, how much does it cost? They will not be able to take what they've seen at a grocery store and really be able to replicate it. They'll have pieces and parts of it in their brain. So if you coach them through it one time or twice, and then do the same thing, you're going to set it up for them. You're going to set the theme. You're going to show them, some variations, and then you're going to at the end close it, just like you would with any other activity. So set it up, show them how to do it. Here's the cash register, here are the things. We walk with, oh, I'm going to take this one, I'm going to buy an orange, how much does an orange cost? And really teaching them the different steps of it, and then fading back and see how they do. And it won't be a long play thing. It'll be like maybe 5-10 minutes tops. So just make sure that they close it and clean it up, because that way it'll make sense then. Oh, we're all done playing store. And then the hardest thing to do is play games that have rules, because rules are hard. Because they're hard to process, and also some of our kids have difficulty with impulse control as well as taking turns. So a lot of games that have rules require your child to wait. So that is another subject altogether, but the more that you can work on waiting, and waiting is hard, so you teach them to count, you teach them to tap their leg or something like that, but having them wait in line, having them wait for a few minutes until they can do something, it really does help that with their impulse control. And so the more you can have them wait throughout the day for things, and not a long period of time, like 20 seconds, but it's very, very helpful in their play skills for turn taking. So with games that have rules, there's lots of waiting, and so we want them to be ready. First, you practice with your child. You could do some people games like Simon Says or hide and seek, and then eventually you do harder games like board games. And Zingo's a good board game, that's pretty easy, and then Candyland if they're a little bit older. But first you practice. I also like red light, green light because it's like a stop and go game. You probably would need a red sign and a green sign so that they would know visually. For some of the kids, they need the actual visuals to know to stop and go. But Simon Says is a great one because that's about imitation. Hide and seek is super fun because kids like to hide, and if your kid's one of those hiders that they are really good hiders, you might not be able to find them. Then I would definitely consider maybe not hide and seek. Because some of the kids can hide pretty well. So first, you practice, then you work on some people games, which are really fun, and then move towards the board games. Okay, so key phrases to introduce, can I play? Or I like your ball. Those types of things that will give your kiddo an introduction into the interaction, and use the same ones. So, because they're not going to be able to hold on, what was I supposed to say? So always say like, can I play? Or I like your ball. Every time, like, can I play is always a good one. And then you may need to help out. As the coach, you may have to get more involved in this one, especially if it's inviting another child to play. That's scary stuff. So you may need to walk up and say, she likes your ball and wants to play with you. Do you think you could ask her to play? Or do you think you guys could play together? The other thing you could do is start you play. So you have to be careful about these now in the playground, but if you're one of those people that children are naturally drawn to you, then that's a good thing, because if another child's drawn to you, you can introduce your child into the play by doing whatever it is that you're doing with your child. So cool, so like with so much fun, it's so great. Then another child will join in with you, and then that would be a great way to ease the two together. By just being so much fun that other kids just want to hang out with you. And then you also need to teach them how to refuse kindly. No, thank you. We have a rule at School of Imagination where children can only say no. The children can't say no. They have to say yes. You can share it. I'll take a turn, whatever, or in 2 minutes. So you can't really say no to friends, and that is a good rule for here, because then in the classroom, we always have that opportunity to take a turn. So you may want to consider that at home too, or just on the play dates, something like that, but only if it's two children that know each other. If you go up to another child and tell them they can't say no to your child, then you'll probably get looked at very strangely. So, but you do have to teach them that for the real world. So in 2 minutes is good, or yes, or not right now. And then those are things that you can integrate into your play with your child too. So here, take this truck, or put that there. Not right now, maybe in 2 minutes. Or no thank you, and then have them understand, like really follow through with the no thank you if they ask you to play or if they ask you to do, because they need to learn that as well, which seems counterintuitive because we've just been talking about how important it is for them to play, but they need to learn the skill how to be rejected in a nice way and not get too sad about it. And if they do get really sad about it, it's one of those times where you would use that to talk. I know you're feeling sad. You wanted to play ball with that little girl, but she just doesn't feel like it right now. And that's okay, because you want to teach your child to be able to be flexible. What happens with parents, though, as as a parent myself, you're like, oh man, they work so hard on asking you to play, and now you're not playing with them, and you want to get a little frustrated with the other child. But keep your temper. All right, let's move on. And here's some things how to keep them playing. So there's 4 routines for structured play that you can follow. You could do a structured game like Simon Says, or red light, green light. You could do a collaborative routine, like you get out all the blocks on the planet and you say, let's build a city. You could do a people game like hide and seek, that type of thing. Or you could do a pretend play routine. So that's something that's more, you're playing in the kitchen, you're doing restaurant or cooking food. So yeah, structured, collaborative, people game, and pretend play routine are the four different structured routines. And so here's how you can be the coach. So you're a coach if when you give them the words to say, and so you want to teach them to say the words in the way that they should say it. So you would say, tell them, I want to play with you. Don't speak about them in the third person, because then your child will learn to speak about themselves in the third person. So will you play with me? That makes me happy. No, thank you. Maybe in 2 minutes, so jump in and give them the words to say for everything. That's whenever they get stuck during play, really just give them the words. They're not going to come up on their own when they first start doing this. Explain or highlight, feelings or responses. So if the other child gets frustrated, you say, oh, she's a little upset because you took her truck. Can you give it back to her? Oh, she was so happy when you shared with her. That's so nice. Then definitely helping your child move on to a new activity. If they get over focused or hyper focused on one, you want to have them move along so that they experience different types of play with their friends. Sometimes kiddos stick too long on an activity and then they play it out, so then they don't ever want to play it again. So when you start seeing them looking in other directions or a turn waning, I don't really care, then just move on. Say, oh, let's do something else. Use the videos. There's lots of social skills videos on YouTube where you can go in and like kids on a playground or kids at a birthday party, and you could show your child how different children are interacting together in these things. And you could do that before they go to a birthday party, and that would be really helpful too. So they do have them, so just take a look. Birthday party, social skills is an important word, and then look on YouTube for those different things, and then your child, go through it with your child and highlight the things that you would want them to note, and talk about why children were responding in that way. Talk about how their body looks, so that they can start being their social detective selves. So videos are great for that. Make sure you stay with them and talk it through with them. And then also the last thing is teaching them how to end play. So as opposed to just walking away, you want to say, thank you for playing with me. See you tomorrow. That was so much fun. Giving them the words to say at the end. So that concludes playing with friends. And so I hope that was helpful. Just remember, initially you're going to have to be the friend, and then you turn into the coach, but not too quickly. Initially, you're still in the mix, and you're setting up play dates and talking with other parents and showing your child how to play with other kiddos. You're giving them the words. You're in the background also working on those functional communication, like how to hand things to you, how to show you things, and working on joint attention. So there's a lot of things you can work on throughout the day to get your child ready to be a wonderful friend.